My son cried again and asked me for his mother. I pointed at the TV. On TV, Olivia was being interviewed. She had just entered the top 3 of the wealth rankings. She said she was now successful, but the one thing she could never forgive was her ex-husband, who she had grown up with. He was there for me when I was at my lowest. He left me for money, but it was that experience that made me stand up again in the face of adversity. I became stronger. The journalists were in high spirits. They all asked to contact me on the spot. He must be regretting it now. He's crying and begging Olivia for forgiveness. He wants to get back together. My phone rings. I answer it. He asks for money straight away. Olivia, my son is sick. Can you lend me 300,000? She suddenly hangs up. She says coldly, knowing that the other person is having a hard time, reassures me. I hold the kidney failure report and silently shed tears. 6 years ago, I secretly donated a kidney to Olivia without her knowing. Now, her son has the same disease. I turn off the TV and put my son to bed. Tomorrow he has to go for a checkup. It's also his birthday. After leaving the hospital, I deliberately take him to the mall to buy a gift. Not far away, it suddenly becomes lively. Olivia is wearing a custom-made black dress, surrounded by a group of people in the middle. I haven't seen her for 6 years. She was no longer the awkward student she had been. She had become beautiful and charming. My whole body suddenly froze. I suddenly remembered that she owned this shopping mall. My son had his eye on an Ultraman. The price was 99 yuan. He quickly put the item back. Dad, I don't even like it. Let's just go home. I looked at my well-behaved son. My heart felt sad. It wasn't that he didn't like the toy. He just thought it was too expensive. I stroked his head. I was about to say that I would buy it, but then I saw my son's eyes suddenly light up. Mom, it's Mom. I didn't expect that. Last night I just pointed at it, but he remembered it well. Olivia's gaze immediately turned this way. As soon as she saw me, her eyes instantly widened. Just then, my son wasn't paying attention, and quickly ran over, clinging to Olivia's leg. She looked down coldly, her brows knitted, but when she noticed the resemblance between her son and me, Olivia's expression suddenly became absent-minded. A flash of nostalgia appeared in her eyes. This rare tenderness was interrupted by a cheerful Olivia. Nathan, wearing a white shirt and jeans, came over quickly. He laughed and complained, I forgot to bring my black card. I'm afraid people will think I'm trying to avoid paying, so I hurried over to you. The manager, carrying several shopping bags in his hands, said in a flattering tone, Mr. Nathan is really joking. Today's spending is only 600,000. It's even less than the watch Olivia gave you last time. He smiled slightly, gently put his arm around Olivia's waist. Isn't this person your ex-husband? He smiled and looked at my son. The child is really cute. Looks like he's 5 years old. Because of his poor health, my son has always been smaller than other children his age. Hearing the word 5, Olivia's face suddenly turned cold. She kicked my son away with a sharp kick. Then she slapped her skirt in disgust, as if she had touched something unclean. My son fell to the ground. His face suddenly turned pale. His lips were also a little blue. Ethan, you just split up with me and immediately found someone else. You're really fast. I ignored her sarcasm and quickly went over to help my son up. Nathan looked around and asked where his mother was. Tears welled up in his eyes. He pointed at Olivia, pouted his lips and said, Dad told me, you're my mother. I felt a pang of sadness and some remorse. My son was crying for the first time and asking for his mother because the neighbor's kid said he was a motherless wild child. Every year his birthday wish was that his mother would suddenly come back. Last night, I did something on impulse. After listening to her son's words, Olivia's face showed a clear expression of mockery. For the sake of money, she even lied to her own son. I never thought you would become like this. Olivia seemed to be recalling the past. A flash of pain and anger crossed her eyes. She was a little agitated. Suddenly she grabbed my wrist, pulled hard, almost pulling me in front of her. In the past you liked me and were good to me. It turned out to be all an act to deceive me. I smelled the familiar scent of Olivia. My thoughts suddenly returned to the past. We have been neighbors since we were young. When we were 15 years old, a car accident took the lives of both our parents. From that day on, Olivia started to learn to cook for two. On the back of my bicycle, there was also an extra person from then on. We snuggled close, and our relationship grew deep. After the college entrance exam at the age of 18, she shyly confessed her love to me. When she graduated at the age of 22, she agreed to my request to propose to her on one knee. That year, Olivia's product design just won the favor of investors. She told Ethan, from now on, you just focus on painting. I will take care of you for the rest of your life. A diagnosis of acute kidney failure sent their happy life plummeting. They could not find a suitable kidney donor in time. The expensive medical expenses became a heavy burden. What's more worrying is that Olivia found out she was pregnant at this time. I was working really hard. I had 3 jobs at the same time. I only slept 3 hours a day. When I was at my lowest, I went to sell blood, but I suddenly fainted during the blood test. The doctor gave me a checkup afterwards, and he told me the news. My kidney was a match for Olivia. A strong perfume smell pulled me back to reality. Nathan rushed up and grabbed Olivia's arm, and gently comforted her. He looked at me and my son's simple clothes with a mocking expression, obviously showing sympathy. He said, Olivia, don't be angry, that's all in the past. I don't think he's doing very well now. He abandoned you in the first place. He wanted to find a rich woman. Now it seems like he hasn't succeeded. After saying that, Nathan gently shook Olivia's arm. Olivia, let's help him. It's only 300,000 yuan. I can buy a bag for more than that. I really can't bear to see the boy so miserable. Not only has he become an illegitimate child, he can't even afford a toy that costs a few tens of yuan. Every word he said seemed to be persuading her, but every word struck Olivia's heart. I once left her because of money, and I soon had a child with someone else. Olivia's expression of reluctance and wavering gradually disappeared. She regained her expression of indifference. She let go of his hand and pushed me away forcefully, but she gently took Nathan's hand. She said softly, "You are so naive. People with a deep heart like her are not worthy of sympathy at all." Olivia's mouth curled up slightly. With a tone of self-deprecating irony, she said, "What's the point of being nice to him? In the end, he will be abandoned ruthlessly." I felt unsteady on my feet. I almost fell. I couldn't hold on to the medical report in my hand, and fell to the ground. Nathan picked it up and looked at it. He whispered in surprise, "Kidney failure." Olivia's face immediately changed. She hurried over and flipped through it. Nathan looked at me in pretended surprise. "Ethan, you really went all out. You even brought your medical report with you to the mall. You even told your son to stop Olivia on the street and call her mom." Olivia's doubts and worries that had just arisen slowly disappeared with those words. She threw the report directly at me. "We haven't seen each other for 6 years. What you're doing is really getting on my nerves. I already lost my child a long time ago. You just bring some random stranger here? Do you expect me to be soft-hearted?" My son finally couldn't hold back his tears. He rushed over to Olivia and tried to hit her. While crying, he shouted, "You're a big bad guy, a stinking bad guy. Dad is the best. Don't you dare talk about my dad like that." I quickly reached out to hug him, but it was too late. Nathan's eyes hardened. He bent down sharply and slapped his son hard. My son staggered from the blow and fell straight into my arms. Her face immediately turned red and swollen. Her mouth was bleeding. I couldn't control myself. I stood up and raised my hand at Nathan, but before my hand could reach him, Olivia grabbed her wrist. Nathan quickly grabbed her shoulders. Her body was still shaking. Her face was full of regret and fear. "Olivia, I'm so sorry. I thought his son had lost control. I only hit you because I was afraid you would get hurt." Olivia stared at me angrily. Her eyes were full of anger. She said, "It's all my fault. Otherwise, you let Ethan call back." She said, "You have no one to discipline your children. Nathan still feels sorry for you." She thought I had taught my son to do this. After being beaten, he happened to find an opportunity to ask for money. He said to Ethan, "Don't you want to borrow 300,000 yuan? As long as you apologize to Nathan, I will lend it to you." I was full of anger, but as soon as I heard the word money, my anger immediately disappeared. I lowered my head, not wanting others to see the pain on my face and the sadness in my heart. For the sake of my child, I could only bow my head and admit my fault. "I'm sorry," I said to Nathan. Tears fell on my shoes. Only my son noticed. He reached out hard. With his small hands, he helped me wipe away the tears on my face. However, Olivia did not keep her promise. She laughed softly. Her laughter carried an indescribable sense of relief. "I just wanted to tease you. It's about time you experienced the darkness and despair I once felt." I clenched my lips tightly. Her eyes were full of pain, but she just smiled coldly. "If it doesn't work out, you can just leave me behind like you did all those years ago. Get rid of this burden. Maybe this little guy can be just like me. Wait for good luck to come along." After saying this, Olivia took Nathan's hand and walked away without looking back. I crouched on the ground and mechanically picked up the medical examination form. Olivia is still in the dark. The miracle she thinks she has experienced was actually that I had donated a kidney to her. That day, I hurried home to tell Olivia the good news about the kidney match. When I arrived home, I found Olivia lying in a pool of blood, with her handwritten suicide note and the torn-up ultrasound report on the table. In her suicide note, she said that she couldn't bear to see me do all the hard physical labor, that her hands, which should have been used for painting, were now covered in dust and scars. She said she didn't want to rack up a mountain of debt for treatment, that would drag me down. She said she loved me more than her own life, so she decided to slit her wrists, so that both of us could be free. She protected me in such an extreme way, so that I could be free. I was so scared that I almost collapsed. I rushed her to the resuscitation room immediately. When she woke up, I slapped her angrily. Olivia, I've wanted a divorce for a long time. You really think I'm that stupid? That I'd willingly follow you into a life of misery? Don't threaten me with suicide. It won't work on me. I lied to her. I told her I'd landed a job at a bar, and I'd already seduced a rich girl. I'll never forget the look of disbelief on her face, except when her parents died. That was the second time I'd seen Olivia cry so hard. She signed the divorce papers and told me to go. I didn't start crying until I was in the taxi leaving the hospital. If I hadn't done that, Olivia would never have agreed to donate her kidney to me. From that day on, I worked like crazy to earn money. Those were the hardest days of my life. I lost 10 pounds a month. I paid the medical bills in secret. I asked the doctor to use the best medicine to ensure the safety of Olivia and the baby. Once I had saved up enough money for the operation, I signed the donation agreement immediately. When my son was born, my kidney was successfully transplanted into Olivia. However, the doctor warned us that her health condition was very poor. If we continued to care for and raise the child day and night, it was highly likely that her kidney would fail again. Therefore, I took my son home with tears in my eyes. I hired a caregiver to help her tell a lie. The child did not survive. He didn't breathe after birth. Because you were in a coma after the operation, Mr. Ethan decided to cremate the baby first. I prepared a fake urn and gave it to Olivia. Recalling the past, I had nightmares all night. In my dream, I saw Olivia lying in a pool of blood. Later, she turned into my son. After waking up, I felt exhausted both physically and mentally, but I still had to go to work. After giving birth, I had a kidney transplant. It took a lot out of me, but thanks to my friend, the hotel manager, who introduced me to the job, he took special care of me. Otherwise, I don't think I would have found such a stable job, so I really treasure it. Today the hotel is booked. Someone is having a birthday party here. I'm really busy. The supervisor suddenly rushes over to me and says, "Some young people snuck out to have fun and accidentally got into a fight with your son. They even dragged him into the private room and beat him up." The tray I was holding fell to the ground. It broke into pieces. I rushed into the private room. The sight in front of me made me furious. My son's face was covered in bruises. There was blood at the corner of his mouth. He was being beaten up by 3 boys aged 7 or 8. They even picked up the champagne next to them and tried to pour it into my son's mouth. I rushed forward and pushed them away. I went crazy and started hitting them. The gorgeous ladies in their fancy dresses screamed and came running. They all tried to protect their children. Olivia saw me in my waiter's uniform, her eyebrows furrowed. Nathan followed her. He was wearing a white haute couture suit. The diamonds on his neckline and wrists sparkled. When he saw the broken glasses and the injured children on the floor, his face showed signs of distress. "Ethan, did you know it was my birthday? You deliberately brought your son here to cause trouble. You wanted to ruin the banquet Olivia had prepared for me. I don't want to get entangled with him anymore." I turned directly to the noblewomen. "You hurt my son. You have to pay for the medical expenses." Olivia's worried expression immediately turned to anger. "Ethan, is it because you can't get the money that you keep pestering me and do everything you can to make me feel uncomfortable?" I smiled bitterly at myself. Olivia gave a cold laugh. She said, "Yes. It's only 3,000,000. Olivia is so rich. Just consider it a tip for me." After she finished speaking, she grabbed me by the arm and dragged me in front of the champagne tower. She wanted my 3,000,000. "No problem. 1 glass of wine is 10,000. You drink as much as you like. I'll pay for it." I looked at my son curled up on the sofa. Without saying a word, I picked up the glass and poured it into my mouth. 1 glass after another. I drank 3 glasses, then 10 more. I drank too fast. The wine choked in my nose. It ran down my face. It wet my hair. My tears flowed endlessly. Everyone around us looked at us with contempt. Nathan covered his mouth with his hand, but the mockery and sniggering in his eyes could not be hidden. At this moment, I felt very embarrassed. My whole body was in a mess. I also don't remember how many glasses I drank. My stomach felt terrible. I couldn't even stand steadily. My son rushed over and tightly hugged my legs. He was crying and his face was red. Dad, stop drinking. Anan doesn't want to get treatment anymore. You bullied Dad. You are all bad people. Olivia finally couldn't hold back any longer. She shouted, "That's enough." She grabbed my hand and forcefully tipped all the drinks on the table onto the floor. I said weakly, "What a pity. We've only drunk 150000." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise. Good. Bring me all the alcohol." Before the alcohol could be served, my friend rushed in. "Olivia, Ethan has kidney problems. He can't metabolize alcohol at all. Are you trying to kill him?" Olivia froze for a moment. She gave me a mocking smile with a cold face. "This is some new pathetic trick of yours." Olivia took a glass of wine from the person behind her. She poured it directly in my face. I felt dizzy. My vision went dark. I couldn't even stand. I just sat down on the ground. "You said your son has kidney problems. Now you're saying you have kidney problems." She picked up another glass of water. It fell from the ceiling and splashed me. "Please go over the lines with your friend. Don't let there be such obvious mistakes." Her friend thought Olivia had lost control of herself. She quickly took a towel and draped it over her. "Say, Ethan donated a kidney to you 6 years ago. The surgery records are still here. Do you want to take a look?" John suddenly yelled. The glass in Olivia's hand fell to the ground. She asked, surprised, "What did you say?" 6 years ago. She narrowed her eyes. A little look of expectation appeared on her face. "You need to be more specific. Exactly when was it 6 years ago?" I wanted to stop John, but I felt cold all over. I couldn't even lift my hand. "August 6 years ago. I remember it very clearly." Olivia's eyes blinked rapidly a few times. "I understand. This is her usual habit when she is thinking." She hadn't had time to sort out her memories of the past. Nathan spoke before she could. "That's ridiculous. If you really donated the kidney, it would be understandable for you to rush here to take credit. Unfortunately, if you calculate the time, you were busy trying to please the rich woman." Olivia suddenly withdrew her slightly extended finger towards me. It hung limply at her side. John was furious. He said that he had been at the hospital with her the whole day of the operation. All the surgical information and examination reports. I have saved them in my phone. If you want to see them, I can find them now. Nathan let out a soft sigh. His tone was a little helpless. "Olivia, you'd better take a look." He said, "I'll go to the mall to block someone first. Then I caused trouble at the birthday party. Those reports are there if they exist." It seems that he had been preparing for a long time. He said, "Anyway, let's just pretend it's true." Nathan bent down. The pair of custom-made leather shoes on his feet were soaked in the spilled wine, but he didn't care at all. His face still had a gentle and compassionate expression. "The remaining 150,000 yuan. I'll help Olivia give it to you. No need to pay it back." "Ethan, is that satisfactory? You've already achieved your goal. Just go. Please don't ruin the birthday party Olivia has carefully prepared for me, okay?" I hugged my shoulders. I couldn't help but tremble. My body felt cold. My heart was even colder. This Nathan, his tactics are really high. On the surface, he cares about me, but in fact, every word is a reminder to Olivia. The things my friends and I said, the evidence we produced. In fact, we all carefully fabricated it in order to cheat for money. Olivia has already believed it without a doubt. She took Nathan's hand. Gently she protected him behind her back. "Nathan, be careful. Don't touch anything unclean." Then, she looked at me with a look like she was looking at garbage, full of disgust. The dirty things she was talking about refers to me. He also called his secretary and asked the secretary to transfer 300,000 yuan to me immediately. He said, "After you receive the money, don't let me see you again." I managed to squeeze out a smile and wanted to say thank you to Olivia. Olivia said coldly, "If you dare to bother Nathan again, I will make you regret it." John stopped in front of me and shouted angrily, "Anan is really your biological son. Olivia, the big boss, you're quite capable, aren't you? Go and check it yourself." Then, he said that the doctor who operated on me is still there. The hospital also has my medical records. If that doesn't work, let's do a paternity test. Olivia, you had a kidney transplant, but you haven't been able to have a child for all these years. Anan is your only son. Don't regret it. John finished speaking. Olivia and I looked up together, Surprise was in each other's eyes. Nathan's eyes revealed his unwillingness and panic. At that moment, I realized that John was right. Olivia quickly let go of Nathan's hand. She quickly took her crying son from my arms. My son cried even louder, kicked and punched Olivia. "You're a bad guy, a bad guy." Olivia wasn't angry at all this time. Instead, she gently cupped her son's face and examined every inch of it carefully. As she looked, the coldness on her face gradually turned to confusion. My heart suddenly tightened. My son's eyebrows and eyes looked like mine. At first glance, the father and son looked quite similar, but I knew that my son's nose and lips apparently. Olivia had noticed it too. She gently extended her finger and tenderly stroked her son's eyebrows and bridge of his nose. Perhaps it was the blood connection between mother and son, or the bond between their hearts. The son, who had been kicking and screaming, slowly quieted down. His reddened eyes blinked a few times, and he looked at Olivia. "What's your name?" The son couldn't help but extend his small hand and put it around Olivia's neck. She whispered, "Ethan Jr." Wishful thinking, peaceful. Dad said, "Mom and I are both sick. He hopes we will always be healthy and happy." Olivia's shoulders shook. Her eyes couldn't help but sparkle. Nathan suddenly felt a rush of joy. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Ethan, you probably don't know yet. Olivia's child died shortly after birth. You probably think she was so angry, she threw the child away or gave it away, so she found a replacement to deceive people, right?" But this time, Olivia didn't let go of her son's hand right away. She lowered her head and thought intently. The moment Olivia let go of Nathan, his face showed signs of unease. A cold gleam flashed in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He then gave the noblewoman next to him a wink. They immediately walked up to them. "Ethan even found out if you could have children or not. That took a lot of effort. Olivia, you can't just raise someone else's child for no reason. Next, will the father and son team join forces against you to monopolize the tens of billions of dollars in assets?" Nathan suddenly covered his face with his hands. Tears flowed down his cheeks. He looked very sad. He whispered, "Ethan, Olivia is only 28 years old. She is at the prime of her life. How can you be so heartless? And cursed us for never being able to have children." These words made Olivia waver. She looked at me and John with a puzzled expression, as if she was wondering too. The noblewoman became impatient. She gave her son a hard pinch. The little chubby boy immediately started crying loudly. "Aunt Olivia, the child in your arms tried to steal my gold necklace. That's why we hit him." His mother immediately followed with a surprised voice. "That big gold pig pendant with diamonds is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. My son must have set his sights on it." The little fat boy's friend immediately chimed in. "Before Olivia arrived, I kept hitting them. He even showed off the red welts on his face where his skin had been torn. I accidentally hit them when I was in a hurry. Olivia, this father and son are behaving badly, just like a family. How can a child with such bad behavior possibly be your child?" Olivia takes a deep breath. She stares at me. "Ethan, is Ethan Jr. really my son? I want to hear you tell me yourself. If you say so, I'll believe you." The air suddenly becomes very quiet. Many people's gazes are focused on me. Nathan bites his lip tightly. Jealousy and resentment in his eyes are about to overflow. I use my hands to support myself on the ground. I slowly stand up. My body is still unsteady. I take my son from Olivia's arms. I bring him back to myself. Of course not. Olivia listens, immediately closes her eyes. Tears flow unconsciously. John stamps his feet in agitation, shouts at me, "Are you crazy? Why did you lie?" I just smile softly. It's enough to lie to get 300,000. It's better not to play too big. Olivia reopens her eyes. Her eyes are deep and cold. "Go away, go away, go away." My son's neck. I don't want Olivia to see me cry. Just like 6 years ago, I'm going to hold back my tears until I get into the taxi. I know, Olivia is right behind me. I follow her to the hospital entrance. It seems like she's waiting for me to look back, even just once. But both that day and now, I can only let her down. I hug my son. I slowly walked towards the door of the cubicle. I hadn't gone far, then everything went dark. I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital. The room was spacious. The facilities were high-end. It was obviously a private hospital. Next to me was a small bed. My son was sound asleep on it. The cuts on his face had been carefully treated. 2 nurses were adjusting the equipment nearby. They didn't notice that I had already woken up. One of them said, "Olivia really cares about her husband." She rushed him into the hospital all the way in her arms. She wouldn't let go even when the doctor tried to take over. All the specialists and directors were called in to give Mr. Nathan a comprehensive physical examination. It was quite a scene. Before I could say anything, Olivia walked in. The nurses quickly shut up and quietly left the room. Olivia moved a chair and sat across from me. Neither of us said a word. The atmosphere was a bit dull. Finally, she spoke first. The doctor said, "You and your son are both malnourished. How can anyone go without enough to eat these days? Ethan, you've had such a hard time since you left me. Do you regret it?" I lowered my head, looking at the white sheets. I didn't say a word. Olivia sighed slightly. She took a box of strawberries from the cupboard and handed it to me. "Have some fruit." I waited for a while. I realized that she hadn't given me anything. I looked up. She was picking off the leaves from the strawberry stems one by one. She looked so focused. It was as if she was holding a contract worth billions in her hands. My nose started to sting. I almost burst into tears. It's been 6 years. She actually remembered my old habits. I like to eat strawberries, but I hate the thought of getting the leaves on my hands. Back then, Olivia was the same. She was always so patient, cleaning things up and feeding them to me. In fact, I would have preferred it if she really hated me. That way, I wouldn't have to know that she never got over me. Olivia stopped picking strawberries and asked, "Are you concerned about me?" Her expression looked a little embarrassed. It was as if she had been caught in the act. She said to Ethan, "Don't think too much about it. I just don't want people to say that I'm not taking good care of my patient." I sneered. "Sometimes, I really think you're going too far." Olivia froze for a moment, thinking she had heard wrong. When she came back to her senses, she stood up abruptly, dropping the strawberries in her hand. He asked me if I understood what I was saying. I asked her if that wasn't the case. "You've been fooled by me several times. You still haven't learned your lesson. And you're still eager to ingratiate yourself with me. I don't mind getting back together with you. After all, Anna needs a stepmother. It's just that Nathan is always getting in the way." I raised the corners of my mouth. I look at Olivia with a hint of provocation. "How about this? You break up with him first." Olivia clenches her fists. I almost think she's going to come over and hit me, but she doesn't. Her eyes gradually calm down. They become determined. She says, "In a month's time, I'll throw Nathan the biggest wedding ever. Ethan," she slowly pronounced my name, "you must come to witness my happiness." I was about to say yes when the doctor suddenly pushed open the door. "Olivia, Nathan's test results are in, and the paternity test you requested." Olivia waved her hand. The stack of papers in midair immediately scattered to the ground. "Don't need to show me. In the future, even if something happens to him, don't need to notify me." Olivia's voice was as cold as ice. Then she strode out of the room. As soon as she had left, John followed her in. He had been standing outside the door the whole time. He had heard everything. He sighed. He asked, puzzled, "I really don't understand. Why did you tell Olivia the whole truth?" I asked John. If Olivia knew everything, how would she react? John answered, "She would immediately come back to me and do everything she could to save our son. She still has feelings for you. When you fainted, she was so worried. Even my friends could tell. Olivia still loves me. 6 years ago, she was even willing to give her life for me. Now, I firmly believe that she will also do everything she can to save our son. This is the last thing I want to see." I told John everything that happened 6 years ago. After I finished telling him the whole story, he fell silent. That's when I understood what was going on. Now, the 300,000 yuan for the operation has been raised. I can finally give my remaining kidney to my son. I took John aside and asked him for a favor. I said, "After I leave, take the letter I wrote and give it to Olivia. In this life, I can equally divide my life between the two people I love most. I am already content. I will have no regrets. John, you are my best friend. From now on, you will watch him grow up for me. Okay?" Over the next 2 days, I continued to recuperate in the hospital, but I noticed that the nurses were looking at me differently than before. I thought he was Olivia's husband. I didn't expect him to be such an irresponsible person. "Have you noticed that Olivia hasn't been to the hospital these past few days? She must have seen the news online too." Hearing all these whispers, I took out my phone and started searching for something I hadn't looked at in a long time. I clicked on it. I found a video that had suddenly gone viral. In the video, Olivia and her bodyguard were helping me, who was soaked to the skin and unconscious from drinking, rush out of the hotel. Nathan chased after them, but Olivia, who looked very worried, pushed him with her arm. He fell to the ground. Is this the person Olivia mentioned in an interview earlier? When she was sick, He abandoned her for money. This kind of person who only values money. Olivia even hurt her current boyfriend for him. Could Ethan really be a demon? I have a friend who happened to be at the hotel that day. He told me that Ethan caused a scene at the birthday party. He even got drunk on purpose to act crazy and pitiful. I heard that he fainted as well, which was also a fake. Suddenly, a lot of comments cursing me popped up below the video. I turned off my phone. I smiled coldly. Someone posted the video so quickly, and they spread all my news. It was Nathan, of course. I tidied up a little. I checked my son out of the hospital. Tomorrow was Monday. I had to take him to kindergarten. When we arrived at the school gate, I greeted the mothers I usually got on well with, as usual, but they all avoided me. They looked at me with disgust and wariness. My son ran happily over to a cute little girl. She was his best friend in class. The little girl suddenly screamed. She shook her son's hand off. "Go away," my mother told me. "Your father is irresponsible. You don't have a mother. I don't want to play with you." My son stood there. His face was red. "You're lying. I have a mother. Her name is Olivia." There was an immediate burst of laughter. A fat woman dressed in pearls and jewelry, who looked like a nouveau riche, walked up to the class teacher. "Teacher, my child cannot be in the same class as a student like Ethan Jr. You'd better expel him quickly. Other parents should also be careful. Who knows if he won't keep pestering us." The homeroom teacher kept persuading, but the fat lady refused to give up. Finally, the teacher had no choice. She suggested that I take my child home today. Seeing this situation, I felt that my son was still not suitable for kindergarten, so I took him to the hotel first. On the way, my son hugged me tightly instead. He comforted me. "Dad, Anan wants to grow up quickly. I will never let anyone bully you again." I smiled and kissed him. I whispered, "Dad will definitely let you grow up safely." Tonight, I work the night shift. It's already 11 p.m. when I get home. Walking in the alley outside the old residential area, the lights are very dim. Suddenly, 3 men who don't look very decent rush out from the corner. They block me in. I'm shocked. I hugged my son and tried to escape. Without saying a word, they rushed up and pushed me against the wall. My son fell to the ground. He woke up in pain. "Who are you? Let go of my father." The thugs laughed and took out a folding knife from their pockets. Their faces showed signs of hostility. One of them said, "We've been short of money lately. Lend us some money." My son grabbed one of their feet and bit down hard. The man let out a cry of pain. He lifted his foot and kicked the son out of the way. The son curled up, clutching his stomach. The moan he let out was so faint it was almost inaudible. "Anan," I stared in horror. I had just screamed for help when a knife was pressed against my neck. "Scream again. We'll do your son next." I felt my body go cold. I dared not resist any further. I immediately took out my mobile phone and the money in my wallet. There was only 2,000 yuan. "That's too little," he asked. "Where's the bank card?" "Transfer 3,000 yuan. I'll let your son go." I was completely desperate. That 3,000 yuan just happened to be the cost of my son's surgery. Just then, a burst of rapid footsteps quickly approached. The man who was pressing on me was suddenly lifted off. He just shouted, "Who is it?" And his head was hit hard. Blood immediately flowed out. "Olivia, Olivia." The tall bodyguard quickly restrained the 3 men. I didn't care about myself. I rushed to my son, holding him tightly. "Save Anan," I shouted. When we arrived at the hospital, I was shocked by the doctor's words. The doctor said, "The child's spleen and kidney have been seriously injured. The situation is critical. A kidney transplant must be performed immediately." "Mr. Ethan, are you sure you want to donate your last kidney to your son?" Before I could answer, Olivia grabbed the doctor's lab coat. "What are you talking about? What do you mean, his last kidney?" The doctor wiped the sweat from his forehead. He told me everything that had come out of the tests. This time, I didn't try to stop him, because I couldn't. Olivia finally understood everything. She hugged me excitedly. Her voice trembled. "I knew it. I knew you wouldn't do that to me. Ethan, you do love me. You always have." I felt a few drops of moisture on my neck. They were Olivia's tears. It was the 3rd time I had seen her cry. It didn't matter now. I had to go into the operating room immediately to save my son. Olivia firmly disagreed. She refused to let go. "Ethan, I have money now. I will go all over the world to find a kidney donor. I will find one. We'll be a family of 3. No one will leave. We'll always be together, okay?" I really can't hold back any longer. I reached out and embraced her slender waist. The doctor told me, even with the most expensive medicine and the best equipment, at most, we can only delay it for 3 days. If we can't find a suitable kidney donor within 3 days, my son really won't be able to wait. Olivia immediately issued a global reward. As long as someone is willing to donate a kidney, she is willing to pay $1 billion as a reward. This news immediately exploded on the internet at home and abroad. Facing a barrage of doubt and criticism on the internet, Olivia immediately asked the company's best copywriting team to work overnight. They described in detail the whole process of how the two of us met, fell in love, and then separated due to misunderstandings. My efforts and our story were finally understood clearly by everyone. Suddenly, an online wish relay activity was launched. Thousands of netizens participated, spontaneously praying for me and my son. Someone left a comment saying, "I apologize for all the things I said to Ethan. This love story is really touching." The whole family was moved to tears. "Little Ethan, you must be safe." During this process, there were also some unpleasant comments. Someone said, "These people are really disappointing. Nathan is so pitiful. He was Olivia's companion for 3 years. He was still her first love, and he was dumped like that. It's a bit ruthless." These words gradually gained some people's approval. However, it didn't take long. The accounts of the internet trolls who deliberately manipulated public opinion were banned. Olivia released the relevant evidence. The police also issued a statement confirming the facts. It turned out that the thugs who tried to rob and kicked her son that night were all under Nathan's orders. Now, Nathan has replaced the previous me. He has become the scheming man everyone talks about. When he rushed into the hospital, I was taken aback. I hadn't seen him for just a few days. The melancholy prince who had attracted so much attention at the birthday party was gone. His hair was a mess. He had dark circles under his eyes. Even his clothes were rumpled. They looked like cheap knockoffs. "Olivia, I really know that I was wrong. I really love you. That's why I did something wrong." In a moment of confusion, Olivia didn't even look at him. She just told her bodyguard to get him out of there. She told me, "Nathan was actually hired specifically to provoke me." She gave Nathan those expensive luxury cars and treasures just because she felt she owed him something. However, he would use such a vicious way to deal with me. Therefore, she withdrew all her property. For Nathan, who is used to a life of luxury, this is no different from falling from heaven to hell. "I didn't let you go to prison. That's already the greatest tolerance." Before Nathan left, looked at me with such hatred. Attracted by the $1 billion prize, it only took 2 days to find a suitable kidney donor abroad. Olivia immediately arranged for a private jet to pick him up. Unexpectedly, as soon as the man got off the plane, he was captured by the traitorous bodyguard. He has never been seen since. I only received a message. It said, "Ethan, you have taken everything from me. I will never let you and your family live a good life." Olivia is beside herself with worry. She is desperate to find Nathan's kidney for her son. She searches high and low for him. Unfortunately, time is running out, and hope is fading fast. Olivia's eyes are getting strange. She turns her back on me and whispers something to the doctor. Just as she's holding a glass of milk and trying to get me to drink it, her phone suddenly rings. Someone has news that Nathan and the donor had been seen in the eastern suburbs of the city. Olivia immediately stood up. Without bothering to put on her coat, she ran out. She said to Ethan, "This time I will definitely bring them back myself." After she left, John came in with the phone. "You told me to send a message to lure him away. You were planning to go into the operating room yourself, weren't you?" I smiled. I poured the milk with the sleeping pills into the trash can. "That's right. If I hadn't done that, it would have been Olivia who went in." Unfortunately, I didn't get to say goodbye to her properly. As I was wheeled into the operating room, I felt an unusual sense of calm. Before the anesthetic took effect, I kissed my son's forehead one last time. "Be safe. Don't worry. From now on, Mommy will love you very much." Halfway through the operation, I was surprised to find myself floating in midair. I could hear the doctor giving rapid orders. The alarms of the various instruments were blaring. I could also hear Olivia shouting outside, trying to break into the operating room. She was indeed clever. Quickly sensing that something was wrong, I heard John desperately trying to stop her. The operating room door opened. The doctor stepped out and announced the good news. Olivia heard the bad news. She leaned against the cold wall and slowly slid down to the floor. That day, she completely disregarded her identity and face and burst into tears. It seemed as if she was crying out all the sadness of the past 6 years. When I was wheeled out covered in a white sheet, Olivia threw herself into my arms. She kissed my pale lips deeply. My son's recovery was going very well. The only thing was that every day he cried out for his father. Olivia gently stroked his head and said softly, "To cure your illness, Daddy has gone abroad. If you get well quickly, then Dad can come back. She took out her phone and played a pre-recorded audio file. I specifically recorded 999 voice messages. For example, "Anan, while Dad is away, you must listen to your mother." The day the program ended, my son should have already reached adulthood. The day my son was discharged from the hospital, he was picked up at the villa where Olivia was staying. Olivia held a bouquet of flowers and quietly sat in front of my grave. She took out her phone and played a recording. It was the 1,000th recording. I had recorded it especially for Olivia. These days, she had heard it many times. Many nights, she had fallen asleep by repeating the sound of my 2 words. The moment she played it, Olivia opened her mouth. Her voice was exactly like mine. It was as if we were both taking an oath at the same time. The end of life is death. The end of love is no love. My life will end, but my love will always be with you. Looking at the almost transparent soul, I understand that I am about to leave forever. I gently floated over to Olivia and kissed her lips for the last time. Olivia's beautiful eyes suddenly looked at me, as if she felt my presence. She said, "Ethan, wait for me. Love will never end. We will meet again in the next life."